Okay. Hello. How are you?
Good good afternoon. I'm great. How are you today?
Doing fine, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
It's a privilege. Thank you.
So, you're an author. You've got a book called Cookesville, USA. Uh, on your bio, it says that you're also a local historian who has authored several books. Tell me about the historian side of your life.
Well, I've been teaching at the college and university level for 26 years for Bakersfield College, Cal State Bakersfield, National University, and currently I'm teaching for College of the Canyons in Santa Clarita and Antelope Valley College in Lancaster. I teach, my emphasis and concentration is in women's history and African American history. But I teach U.S. history all the time and have taught American economic history for 8 years. So I'm well versed in the field of history. So it's a little misleading to say a local historian. I've traveled and presented internationally twice at Oxford and once in Athens, Greece, and have scholarly articles. But between those times, I have also written motivational articles and some historic fiction. This is my latest. It's my favorite. It's the biggie in my mind and my affections.
Yeah, you're right. Local historian sounds a little understated, I think, since you've done all of that. Maybe world historian might be a better
Right.
title. Okay, so the book is called Cooksville, USA. It says it's a mystery thriller. This is you said historical fiction?
It is, but it's a crime thriller, and it's based upon my many years in Bakersfield, a town that I never wanted to move to, but was brought here. And every time I planned my escape, I either was hired into a new position or I met someone that snagged me to stay. So I'm still here, and I decided it was time that somebody told the inside story of this Wild West town. And because it's dramatic, it's erotic, it's one of a kind town, like a enclosed space looking in on itself with a lot of wealth and a lot of insider stories.
Is the book based on any sort of true events, true life events?
Most of it, yes, most of it. There's a few people and events that are a composite of several, but most of it are specific people I have known, played tennis with, socialized with, known in Kern County law, and played on the tennis courts with, and known about their affairs. But a very good friend of my husband and I was the leading criminal investigator for the leading criminal law firm here in Bakersfield. When he passed in 2011, I had already told him, I want to tell your story. And after that, I decided I had to fictionalize it to protect both the innocent and guilty and tell the insider stories of this town.
Oh, I see. Okay, but you also moved the story back 150 years.
Back then, this town of Bakersfield was founded in 1850. So my fictional town of Cooksville, I decided to establish in that year after a man named Frank Cook. I invented him, and he followed the history of the Mexican War from 1846 to 48, then came to the goldfields of California, made his money in gold, and then settled in this Central Valley area. And of course, the town's named after him, Bakersfield, Colonel Baker.
Okay, so maybe I'm just a little confused. So it says 1850 on your sheet. What is the time frame that the book takes place? The time period?
It actually begins with 1846, the Mexican War. In order to establish Frank Cook as a cavalryman who becomes involved in the war, comes through Santa Fe and meets some other historic characters, then moves on to the California gold fields. The establishment of Cooksville is in 1850 when California became a state. So that's when Bakersfield was established as well. So I wanted to set the atmosphere, the zeitgeist of the period. I've taught California history and I've been teaching U.S. history for long enough to understand how the establishment of California cut a lot of native people out of the picture. It became quickly a state rather than organizing as a territory. And that's why I called it Cookesville, USA, because California was just arriving on the scene and a lot of people were establishing themselves here after the gold rush. So it was a very dramatic period in time, a time of vigilante justice from San Francisco southwards. And so I set that mood for establishing this town with a very, very diverse population. A lot of Chinese, Native Americans, Hispanics, the new white settlers, and the privileges that came with being white in the new territory.
If I remember my dates correctly, California became a state in 1846. Is that correct?
No, 1850.
Oh,
And that's
1850
when the
became a state.
Constitution was drawn up. Yeah,
Oh,
1850.
okay.
It was the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo from the Mexican War that gave that territory to the United States. It was the gold rush that populated it, and then in 1850 they applied for statehood as a free state, a free soil state, just established by the Free Soil political party. So the first capital was in Monterey, California, and they wrote the Constitution there. So Bakersfield was being established then, and Cooksville in my book was being established at that time. But most of the book is spent in the 20th to 21st century because those are the people that I know. Those are the people I'm familiar with. And so I tell the backstory because it's very interesting to the readers that I know, everyone who has reviewed it, to go back and forth and understand the little sections and pockets of the community that were established by various races and ethnicities. And that continued on through the 20th century.
Okay, it sounds like California was somewhat of a Wild West state when it first became a state. Where we don't hear a lot about California, it's always Arizona that the stories seem to come from, or the movies anyways.
That's true. As far as Western series are set from Texas to Arizona
Yeah.
in that region, but California was definitely a Wild West town, and Hollywood grasped onto it early in its industry, bringing, stories from Tom Mix and the real Wyatt Earp, and putting those on the screen in its early history. And Bakersfield has a close connection to Hollywood in that regard. Ever since I've lived here, I've been amazed at how I walk past an actor in the Costco, or I bump into Merle Haggard at a funeral service, and Buck Owens on the tennis courts. Buck Owens showed up at my house, a house that I was selling in the Southwest in a gated neighborhood. After his last divorce, he showed up at my house to look at it. So, I mean, it's just one of those communities with close connections to Hollywood, and a lot of filming has occurred here because there are Old West settings throughout Kern County. So it's the underpinnings that I wanted to unveil, because Hollywood has tended to make Bakersfield the butt of its jokes. And a lot of the time I'd go right along with it, kind of laughing at this valley town. But I'll have to say, it is wild and it is wicked, but it also is very, very wealthy and influential because of the oil industry bringing people from all around the world. For Occidental Petroleum brought them from all over. And Shell Oil's owned by Royal Dutch and brought a lot of Dutch people to the community. And then the growing cotton community. I mean, cotton was planted all the way across the South to the arid West, and it's a big part of our economy here. Cash crops, food crops, and the oil industry. And it produces a much more metropolitan flavor than a lot of people would recognize. But it also has its patent place stories, and they're abundant. And so my friends around Bakersfield have had fun trying to figure out who is who.
So what is Bakersfield like these days?
It's still a growing, thriving community. I live in a gated neighborhood, which happens to be a 55 and older neighborhood, so I've let you know. But it's very, very diverse, and there are people still retiring here from the Southland because they don't have to drive on the 5 or the 405 and get stuck in traffic for hours on end. Come up here and they can buy lots more land, and they can build a much larger house, and they can enjoy all of the country clubs and tennis clubs. And it's surprising to see how many people move here and say, wow, this is the best kept secret in California, because it is a beautiful, sprawling community. And most people just think of it as the ugly oil fields you pass on the 99 freeway. But it's really not that. So I thought I should do it a favor and share all of the stories, the excitement and the drama, the love affairs, extramarital and otherwise, and crimes from the 40s onward. My man, the main man that goes through the entire story, I call him Lenny, and he was a GI man. He was there to enforce accounting practices with the big oil and big ag companies, and he went to Las Vegas when Bugsy Siegel was there, and
All right.
he rubbed shoulders with him, was friends with him, but he was informing on him. So he was the real deal, a GI man, and he became the leading criminal investigator in this community. So he had amazing stories to share. He covered up one crime that very few people that don't know country western know about, Spade Cooley, but he was a crooner, and he was a lookalike for Roy Rogers and often stood in for him on his show. And Lenny and his firm showed up to cover up for Spade Cooley, carried the bloody boots away. So that's one of the stories in my book.
We do have to wind this down. We are out of time. My guest is S.C. Burns, and her latest book is Cookesville, USA. Is the book out now?
Oh, it came out. It was published June 29. So yes, it's been available on Amazon ever since. You can get it through Barnes & Noble, through any big bookseller. The quickest method, of course, is Amazon. So it is Cooksville, USA, and you can read all about it on CooksvilleUSA.com, my website.
Okay, Cooksville, USA, spelled COOKESVILLE, right? .com?
Right, correct.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing and everything you've always wanted to know about Bakersfield. And best of luck with the book. I hope it does well.